So welcome. It's Lumpy with Fool's Paradise Fishing. And today we're going to talk more about flipping for reds. However, it's going to be looking for places to go find them. As you can see in the computer back here, got the image of the Russian River down there by Cooper Landing. And then we'll talk about a couple of places to go to there. And we may cover some other spots. It just depends on time. But one of the things I wanted to mention from the previous video on flipping for reds, I forgot to mention that, hey, you want to flip that line out there, give the weight a chance to sink to the bottom, a couple of seconds, and then start slowly pulling it across. And you want to feel that weight tapping on the rocks on the bottom. That way it makes sure that hook is in the prime area to floss the fish. And so the other thing I want to mention is that the fish run right up on the bank. You know, they're going in the easiest part of the river. They're trying to get out of the main current. So use your polarized sunglasses and look for them. And you'll see them. I've seen them on the Kenai, the Kasilov, and the Russian, sometimes running right up next to the, as shallow as they can get so they can get out of the main current. So you don't have to get too deep. I've seen people up to their hips in their waders on the Kenai, and I'm kind of like shaking my head. You don't need to get that deep. They run right up next to the shore. So kind of look for them and plan how to floss them in that manner. All right, so let's go look at the computer and we'll find some spots to go floss for sockeye on the Russian River. Oh, and by the way, it's going to be a good year this year. Their forecasts are higher than last year. They're looking at 3.5 million or so for the Kenai and 1.5 million or so, plus or minus, for the Kasilov. And then I didn't see anything for the Resurrection River, but if it's good in those two spots, it's probably going to be good there too. So it'll be a good year for flossing for sockeye. The other I haven't seen too much. I did see the halibut report, not looking as good as last year. So you may want to focus on sockeye this year. But let's look for spots to go first, and then we'll cover the rest of it later. All right.
All right, so we've transitioned over to the map, and I'm on Google Earth. And what you'll see is I got Seward highlighted here, and we'll zoom in on the military resort, which is right here next to the road. So if you go out Nash Road, which takes you around the airport, out past the Alaska Waste Seward, there's a couple of ways you can get out to Fnac Beach Park in there, but what you'll notice is Salmon Creek, and Salmon Creek crosses the Nash Road right about here. And so Salmon Creek turns into Bear Creek and into Bear Lake. And when the sockeye come into Seward, they're heading up to Bear Lake because sockeye spawn in the lake. So that's one spot. It's not that great. I don't hear a whole lot about it, but it is there. So just something to think about when you're planning. Ask the locals there, see what they say. But in order to get over to the Russian River, you hop onto the Seward Highway, which is Alaska State Highway 9. Go up the road up towards Moose Pass. And you end up seeing a part of Kenai Lake, because Kenai Lake makes a big Z. And it ends up over at Cooper Landing. And what it does is it goes around this big series of mountains, which has Crescent Lake, of course, in it. All right, so you go up by Crown Point, go through Moose Pass, and I forgot the name of the lake there, but you get to the intersection of the turn lake pullover, which will get you onto the Sterling Highway, which is Highway 1. Now you might want to stop at Turn Lake. There's all sorts of interesting birds there. You'll see a couple of swans, because if you didn't know the story about swans, they migrate up here and then they camp out on a lake, and it's just two swans, one mating pair to a lake, and they'll beat off the rest of them in order to have the lake to themselves. And then it takes you over to Cooper Landing, and let me find the Always got to stop at Wild Man's. They got coffee and ice cream, Umpqua ice cream. Sincombe or the Fun Bosses. Cousin worked at Umpqua Ice Cream, so we always get Umpqua ice cream. Gwen's Lodge is always a good place too. But now we're getting into the area where you want to spots to floss for sockeye. So if you want to come up, you can stay at the Russian River Campground. It puts you right on the river. However, it's also known for bears. I was up here in like 2011 and was going to go fish. At that time, you could fish for Chinook, but it's been on the uh, in a recovery phase right now. But what was it? Yeah, there were lots of people there and lots of bears, and we were standing there watching uh, myself and two of my kids when they're little. They're in their 20s and 30s now, but we were standing there watching this bear and a sow with two cubs, and it was a brown bear tearing up somebody's backpack. And we're standing next to this couple who were holding their salmon, and it just kind of mentioned to him, I was like, man, it must suck for whoever owns that bag. And they're like, yeah, it's our bag. And I'm like, well, the rules or the advice you get from the Forest Service is throw the fish and grab your stuff and get away. And they're like, oh, we're not giving up our fish. So they eventually got their bag back after the bear ate everything inside of it. So there's a couple of things you could do if you want, and you can stay here at because you can fish the entire Russian River uh, up to there's a point somewhere right around here, the campground, where you can't fish any farther north up to the falls. So there'll be signs out there. I've never hiked up far enough to see the signs that say no fishing, but this area around the campground. The one thing about it is if you stay at the campground, as you can see, you're on this side of the road, the river, because up here at Schooner's Bend, the Sterling Highway crosses the river, and now the river's on the south side of it. This is a north-facing map. And so you can fish anywhere along the Russian River here. It doesn't matter what side. Most people fish on the south side just because the north bank is a little bit rougher, and the south side has trails and there's also ladders down to the river. So it's a little bit easier side to fish, although you'll see people in drift boats fishing on both sides. Sometimes they'll get through over here, but in the spring and the early summer, this is all underwater. So this winter picture is at a low water period, so you won't see that much. If you're just coming down for the day, so you come into Sportsman Landing, there's also a drift boat drop off. However, Sportsman Landing does cost some money to park. I think it's like $12. It changes every year, so I won't know what it is for next year until they put their rates out. And then you can come down here and jump on the Russian River Ferry, which takes you across the river. And as you can see, all this area you can fish, and you'll see people fishing all the way around to the end of the bend here, and you can walk all the way down here. Once you get down to the end of this sandy thing, then it gets more rough, and you don't see people fishing farther north. And you'll have people shoulder to shoulder, is not as much as it used to be, but you'll be pretty close, about 8 to 10 feet from the next person when it's really busy. And the only thing with the Russian River Ferry is it kind of goes from about 7 to 10. It shuts down at 10 at night, and it's kind of an interesting ferry. It's like the Outlaw Josie Wales ferry, where they get, except the people don't pull across back and forth. So the ferry, they actually have a rudder, and it turns the boat into the current of the river, which pushes it to one side or the other. And so that's how you get back and forth. And they put them in during the winter, but there's ramps there and ramps on this side. And then there's ladders. They pull all that stuff up in the winter. But, a lot of the best places to fish are these areas right here. But the fish go all the way up here. So I've never been up here because it's too much of a hike, but I know that people are fishing up there because you'll get people fishing who said they'd come down from the campground. So it's shallow enough down here that you can jump across or walk across with your waders. When you get farther down here, it's too deep. This area is pretty deep. You can't get, you need a boat. You can't just walk across it. But the other thing that you'll have here at the Russian River ferries is there'll be tables that you can fillet your fish. So bring your knife. A lot of people bring knives in a garbage bags, so you can throw your fillets in there. What you're supposed to do is break up the fish or cut them in half, throw them in the middle of the river so the current takes them down into the Ski Lake. And also, because the other reason is you don't want them on the side of the beach because that brings in the bears. And this spot here is, if you're into rainbow fishing, is a huge rainbow spot because everybody cleans their fish right here and right here, and then they don't save the eggs, so they chuck the eggs and the rainbows just eat them up. And so you'll get some really big rainbows out of the Russian River and the Kenai. So this side, the north side, is the Kenai. The thin piece here is the Russian River. And remember, you have to have your 3/8 inch hook for that area. And so, uh, like I said, you can either get the flies from the stores, or you can get the hooks and just throw a tuft of pink yarn in the early part of the year and orange yarn in half, because they will bite at it. So that helps. All right, so that's pretty much all we're going to talk about. This is the spot you want to go to. There's lots of information on it, but I just wanted to give you visual representations of what you can see. But you'll see people, when the Kenai's open, you'll see people parking everywhere to floss for sockeye. And if you don't want to pay the Russian River ferry, there's some spots like there's some parking areas. You can park here and walk down here, or you can walk down here. Bends in the river are really good too. You'll see people on drift boats fishing all around here. I've hiked the power line slash down to here, but it's kind of a rough area to get to, so I don't know. Wouldn't recommend it. Pay the money or go through the campground and fish the Russian in this area. Went with a couple guys one time when the limit was 6, and we had to fill up the backpack with 18 fillets, and it got to be a workout. But anyway, so that's all we have for today. This is Lumpy with Fool's Paradise Fishing, and we'll see you on the river.